Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the inn. We have some changes, nerfs, balances, whatever you want to call them at this point, that have decided to come on down the pipeline. There's only 5 this time, though, so that's a good thing. However, I just want to go ahead and get things and dive right into it. We're going to start with Innervate. It's still staying a 0 cost, but instead of gaining 2 mana crystals this turn, you're only gaining 1. Okay. Basically, I have a 0 cost coin. Or a counterfeit coin, basically. Or just a coin in general. Whatever you want to call it at this point. I knew it was coming, because if anything, with Druid being able to just ramp as hard as it could, being a big issue for the class right now, especially. So it's one of those things where it's like with Innervate, I'm like, alright, it's not the end of the world for me. Bulb?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a bummer that it's not going to really be too distinct effect-wise from a coin or a counterfeit coin or whatever you want to call it. But it does kind of add a consistency to these type of effects. It's kind of like if there's going to be a minuscule ramping effect, it's going to be for one mana. It's going to cost 0, and having that kind of consistency in Hearthstone is not a bad thing. This kind of works because where Counterfeit Coin will rotate out, Innervate will not, so that means that Druid will consistently have this type of effect for all of Hearthstone, while other effects for other classes will rotate in and out. And you know what? I'm fine with that. It is kind of a bummer because we're so used to Innervate getting 2 mana crystals this turn. It's kind of become synonymous with Druid, but it's also been super duper powerful, and it has led to a lot of broken combinations. So I'm good with this. That means we don't have to worry about like turn 1 Flappy Birds or any broken turn 1 plays. They're just going to be plays that you can expect anybody to make if they had a coin in their hand. And this is good for Druid because this just gives them temporary ramp of just 1 turn ahead. And that means they're going to use Innervate when it makes the most sense to. Basically, it gives the idea of Druid being a small ramp class, and that does have potential downsides as well as upsides. And so I think this really works out for Druid a lot more, and it makes ramp more of a thoughtful strategy rather than something that Druid can just stick into every deck. And so I'm all for this. I think we do need to talk about, Eddie, though, about how we predict this is going to affect Druid right now as a class.
But real quick before we do that part, I'm just gonna say, ha ha ha. You think this protects you from turn 1 Flappy Bird? No! Because it's Innervate Coin Flappy Bird!
Yes, but that means that they're expending 2 resources instead of 1.
I know. I just have to go,
It makes things a lot more manageable, and if they're going to do broken plays, they have to expend more resources, which means that they are losing cards in hand, which can come back. Again, it's a trade-off.
Yeah.
Which wasn't there before.
And if anything, just like real quick, just to mention it, the other options that were considered for Innervate was refresh 2 mana crystals, gain 2 mana crystals this turn, and increase the mana cost to 1, which I wouldn't have been angry with that. Because it's just like it makes it to where Skulking Geist becomes a little bit more of a bit of a, hey, look, you can add this to the deck now. And then the gain 6 mana crystals this turn only and increase the mana cost to 4. And it's just like, at that point, you're still only gaining 2 mana crystals, but it's a 4-cost card, and that would have killed it entirely.
Yeah, I like that, and we're going to kind of see this for the most part. They really did it overbalance things or over nerf things. They kind of made thoughtful changes, which I like this direction coming from Blizzard. I'm glad that they did not consider the 1 cost option because it's kind of stupid. Hey, you gain 2 mana, but it costs 1, so in actuality, you're only gaining 1 mana. Yay!
Yeah.
if they're going to do that anyway, you might as well just keep it a zero-cost card and do what they did here.
Yeah, which is what they did.
Yeah. I think it's a good play. A lot of people, and we have to discuss these changes and how it really affects classes. A lot of people are talking about, I think it's going to be ran less. It's not going to be a must-play in every single Druid deck. I think ramp decks for sure will want to run this. Aggro decks will not. I just don't think expending that many resources is going to be a good thing just to get like a Flappy Bird out. I think it's up in the air whether Jade Druid continues to play this or not. One moment.
Okay, if anything, to basically be the guy who goes and just touches on Jade Druid, because, like, this is my deck. This has been my deck since freaking Mean Streets of Gadgetzan. And right now, I take a look at this card and I go, okay, so they're taking this zero-cost card that I could ramp up and kind of really, if I wanted to, but at turn 5, be able to just slam down a Ultimate Infestation. I can't do that anymore. But, if anything, this makes it to where I can open up my deck slots more, because it's just like, I can take those two out, because it's like, oh, look, you're getting 1 mana more this turn for 0. Well, okay, I mean, you're just as good as a coin? So, unless I'm, like, yogging or whatever, I can put in more tech cards for my deck. So if I want to put in Big Game Hunter because it's still going to be a problem, I'm going to put in Big Game Hunter. I can re-add in the Lich King into my deck. I can put in more ramp cards because, hey, look, Mire Keeper can now go to 2 and just go, wee, boom, on curve or on turn or whatever, just to ramp up faster. So it's just, I can see on one end basically just gutting the card from the deck. But I can also see on the opposite end of that, if you don't have the Ultimate Infestation to be able to feed into your deck, you're going to run this with your Gadgetzan Auctioneer still, because it's a free spell that allows you to be able to at least draw 1 and then get the 1 mana to where you can potentially spend it on something. So I've at least got to put up the argument for why you would get rid of it and why you would keep it. So
yeah, it comes down to the type of decks that are going to be ran, and what kind of player is running the Jade Druid deck, what kind of Jade Druid deck you really want to come to, because there are variations on the theme. And I think one of the things that has kind of come about with Frozen Throne is just the fact that we are seeing more variations of Jade Druid. They have a certain core, and I don't agree with everybody on what that core necessarily needs to be. A lot of people say the core is like 23 cards. I think you can get them down to 20. But this will change the core. That means the core will be smaller, and it'll come down to what kind of deck you are running. A lot of players that play Hearthstone, even though they complain, tend to net deck, and they tend to value, especially in Standard, they value incredible value cards over cards that offer meaningful decisions or synergy. What that means is that chances are that most of those players will not play Innervate because they don't see the value in playing Innervate as a card. It just doesn't make sense. They're running Ultimate Infestations. They're just trying to get a whole bunch of value. They really do not care. Those who are building a more thoughtful, almost classic version of Jade Druid probably would like Innervate because they can use it more skillfully. Innervate's going to be one of those cards that you kind of want to now use to maybe get off a Wild Growth consistently on turn 1, or come out or go up to a or do a mini ramp up to a minion that you couldn't summon until next turn just to get a little bit more of an advantage. It's not going to offer huge ramp, but it's going to offer a small enough ramp to give you answers. And that's really, I think, what the people who will play Innervate will play it for. It's going to be played in ramp. It's going to be played in ramp druid decks. It's going to be played in druid decks that are a little bit slower, more thoughtful, trying to set up certain combos, and that can make the most use of it. So I think that it's going to drop off as a commonly played card, but in the decks that will continue to run it, I think it will be a key card and will be used skillfully. And that's the term we should keep in mind as we move through some of these changes is skillfully, and also what constitutes a baseline card.
Yeah, and if anything, like I said, I'm fine with the change. I expected the change, and if anything, with the next card that I know we're going to discuss, Bob, I'm going to just go here. Take the keys, man. Go with it.
So, Fiery War Axe was changed from a 2-cost 3/2 weapon to a 3-cost 3/2 weapon. And I know a lot of people are up in arms about this change, but I'm going to be honest. This is actually not a bad change. I think it's a good change. And I think it makes sense for the game. 3/2 is the baseline stat for a 3-cost weapon. And a lot of people will go, oh, Fire War Axe is now worse than this 3-cost weapon, this 3-cost weapon, and this 3-cost weapon. All of which have 3/2 stats and then do something extra. But here's the thing. All of the weapons that they are referring to, whether it's the Rogue weapon, or whether it's Paladin Rallying Blade, or whether it's King's Defender, or whether it's Hunter's Bow, all of those come from expansions. They are not basic cards. What that means is Fiery War Axe, you get it automatically. It's yours to keep. You will always have it. Everything else, you must earn. And what that means is it's okay for them to have base stats and get something else because you have to earn them. Whereas Fiery War Axe is free. And you know what? That's exactly what basic cards need to be. They need to start you out. They need to essentially provide a little bit of class identity, but they also need to be a baseline card and not be overpowered compared to other cards and expansions. And Fiery War Axe was just overpowered when you compared it to all the other classes and all the other cards that came out of the expansions. It made cards that were introduced to expansions so much worse, like King's Defender, because Fiery War Axe existed. Whereas what really needed to happen was that King's Defender should have been an option over Fiery War Axe and should have been played instead of Fiery War Axe because it's an expansion and that's what you do. It's kind of what Blizzard is aiming for, is that basic cards are playable, are very good, but in the long run, they don't want them to be played all the time, all over the place. They're expecting that that the cards you get from expansions kind of give you more options that tend to be better. So Fiery War Axe, I absolutely agree with this change. It does not hurt the card. It's actually a good cost. It's a consistent cost for a 3/2 weapon. It makes 3/2 the baseline for a 3-cost weapon, and it just means that every expansion with a 3-cost 3/2 weapon will have some sort of effect. It will be better than Fiery War Axe, but that's expected because it's a freaking card in an expansion. This is a perfectly fine change. It's a change that needed to happen, and it actually makes sense compared to what we've gotten in the game as a whole. And essentially what it does is instead of just being a nerf, it actually creates a baseline, which is what the basic cards need to do. This is a great change. I think we're still going to see this in play, but this will also allow other warriors to actually experiment a little bit with future weapons.
Ah, yes. The Fiery Wind Axe finally getting the so prevalent nerf bat that it has freaking needed for a good while now. I mean, yeah, sure, you can sit and complain and go, it didn't need it. It makes warrior intuitive. It makes it to a warrior can do this, this, and that. And it's like, yeah. But the thing being is, it kind of needed the damn nerf bat for a good while, especially when the meme has been going around with it of it being called the Fiery Wind Axe.
And let's be honest, guys, 2 cost was way too cheap for this weapon.
Oh, look at me! I'm gonna go ahead and play my Mana Worm, and then I'm just gonna coin out the Fiery Wind Axe as warrior and just crush it underneath my boot, and then walk away. And it's just like, seriously? I just played my one card, and then I can't play any other card now. Too bad! But, like I said, it's just one of those things where it's just like, I'm not surprised by it. I was like, okay. I was expecting it to come next year, at least with the 2018, rotations / whatevers. So it coming this soon, I'm just like, ooh, potentially what are you having coming down the pipeline with your next expansion to make it to where you'd want to maybe get rid of, or at least put Fiery War Axe in this pinnacle spot of, oh, hey, look, you're a 3 cost. If anything, it makes it to where now Pirate Warriors have to go, well, we need N'Zoth's first mate right on the get-go. So you have to, instead of playing, coin into Fiery War Axe and then playing your pirate, now it's, okay, N'Zoth's first mate, and if you draw patches, well, this makes my turn 1 really, really bad. So it's just like, maybe it'll knock off Pirate Warrior, or at least knock it down to where it's no longer the complete and utter tier 1 aggro dominant deck that people could just go brainless and just play. So it's just like, yeah, tally bye-bye. I don't freaking care about Fire War Axe now costing 3. I could potentially still play it in other decks. Or at least now I get to experiment with other weapons in Warrior. So it's just, who knew?
And like I said, I still think Fiery War Axe will be played. It just means that the weapon is not overpowered, which it was in the 2-cost slot, and it's more consistent with every other 3-cost weapon in the game, which is a good thing for a basic weapon. So guys, this is not a mega nerf. This is actually a very thoughtful and really good tweak that actually makes the game more consistent, just like I said earlier with Innervate. I'm actually very happy with this change. It will continue to see play. Don't worry about it, guys. Fiery War Axe is not going anywhere.
Yep. Next on, we get to move on to Hex. It went from a 3-cost to a 4-cost. Okay. I mean, I get where they make the explanation of like, hey, we're not changing it because of the current power level of Shaman. It's just more or less, it's like, hey, we're making it to where it's now basically a polymorph. Okay. I mean, if you want to make it to where also it basically fits in that spot of, or at least frees up that spot for potential silence minion, because Ironbeak Owl being something you can just go run in 3 slot now. And with Hex, it's like, okay, Hex in the 4 slot. The only thing contesting it right now is Jade Lightning. So, with it being rotated soon enough, Hex being at that 3 slot, it was in that 3 slot. You had Lightning Storm, you had Feral Spirits, you had the Mana Tide Totem, you had so much in that spot. And now it's just, okay, Hex is being moved to a 4. So it's like, okay, I can reasonably see it being played potentially more because of it being in that 4 spot. It also depends on what we see as far as the metagame goes. So, Bob?
I'm kind of scratching my head on this one. I don't understand why this change was made, to be honest. I don't think Hex has ever been really problematic, and even when it was in the 3 slot. I mean, it's not a bad change, I guess. I guess it does kind of make it more consistent with Polymorph or any of the other 4-cost spells that actually remove a minion. But I don't think it was out of place in the 3-cost slot either, because a lot of people have pointed out that that's the reason that the 0/1 frog had taunt, was because of the 3-cost slot, 3-cost spell. I really don't understand why this change was made. The explanations for why this change was made really don't make sense to me. The whole idea about, Shaman really not having an identity and whatnot, it's like, okay, are they going to try to give Shaman more of an identity? What is that identity going to mean? What does it mean to be a Shaman? Inquiring minds want to know, because I'm really confused about where they're coming from this perspective. The only thing I can think of is the reason they made a change to Hex has to do with upcoming cards. Out of all the other card changes we've seen, that's the only reason I can come up with that Hex was changed, is because if they didn't change it, it would make something broken in the future. So I'm thinking that's where they're coming down on, is they couldn't really tell us why Hex was changed. I think Hex was changed because there's a card in an upcoming, and probably in the next set or one of the sets soon after, that would have been broken with Hex at 3. Or there's something coming up, I think, that necessitated a change from Hex being a 3-cost spell to a 4-cost spell. So I think that's what's really going on, because otherwise this confused the heck out of me. But I mean, I can't say it's a bad change. It's just a really confusing change for me.
Yeah, I mean, like, if we take a look, because it's like, Shaman, is a class that currently has a lot of flexibility and lacking in identity and identifiable weaknesses. Really, you're, like, on one end, the whole thing of identifiable weaknesses, you are absolutely on the money on that. Because it's just like, this is your Swiss Army knife class. But as far as having an identity goes, it's really a parasitic class.
Well, to be fair, Drew's that parasitic class now. I made that response last year. I thought Shaman was going to continue to be like that. It's not anymore. I think that's just something that's an effect of the community on dominant classes. But yeah, Shaman really doesn't have a class identity, and I think Blizzard is getting ready to make some changes with Shaman, and I think that's why Hex was changed.
Yeah. The main draw and reason why I was saying that Shaman was basically like a parasitic sort of thing is because, oh look, it can silence, it can freeze, it can heal, it can do jades, it can do token, it can do buff/bloodlust thing.
I think that's why they said it was very versatile. So it sounds like they're going to try to, instead of diversifying Shaman, they're going to try to focus Shaman. And again, I think that's why Hex was changed.
Yeah. So it's just
it means there's something coming down the pike that needed Hex to be be where it is.
Yeah. So it's figuring out what we want to do now, because it also like makes it to where Hex goes from from that 3 spot of, oh god, this 3 spot is clogged, to where now it's, okay, 4 spot. What am I going to do with you? Because right now, Jade Lightning is your big contester, as well as Genie Water Speaker. But those two are going to be rotating out soon, so I can dig Hex going to 4.
And I think Hex going to 4 will make it so that not everybody runs one anymore, but I still think it's absolutely playable.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next change was Murloc War Leader, which was changed from it giving all your other Murlocs +2/+1 to it just giving all your other Murlocs +2 attack. I think this is a good change. Number one, the only thing that you're really using War Leader for in the first place was to give all your Murlocs +2 attack. That +1 just made things very annoying. A lot of people going, well, you should figure out the counterplay yourself. But it does make it more difficult than it really needs to be by giving the +1 attack and it being a base attack, and you think that a clear should work, and it doesn't. It makes Murlocs easier to interact with, easier to clear the board, easier to understand, and Murlocs in general are an aggressive type deck, so they care more about attack than they do health. I think overall this is a very smart change. It's a very necessary change. It makes things simpler for Murlocs, and it's not going to affect the strength of the deck at all. So I think this is a good change, and I'm actually very happy with this.
My Murloc Shaman deck's getting hurt.
Oh, it wasn't hurt that badly. Where?
Hence why, if anything, I was being overly dramatic about it, because it's just more or less like, look, I get it. If anything,
Use
like,
an Oracle.
What?
Use the Oracle Seer, whatever that buffs the Murlocs by 2.
Well, duh. You're gonna use the Cold Light Seer for giving your Murlocs health, which I already do use. But, like I said, I had to be overly dramatic about it. If anything, considering Murloc War Leader as well, given that this little bugger can sometimes pop out and keep Finja alive when it should have traded Finja, that was another problematic interaction that I would say I had with War Leader. Now that's practically gone. So, yeah, I'm fine with this change. Because it's just, you see this, and it's like, okay, goodbye complications there. It's still going to be a prominent Warlock card, and really, like, Murloc Paladin gets a little bit of a kick, which is another one of those top-tier meta decks.
I don't think it's going to hurt them that much.
It's not going to hurt them that much, but it's just more or less like, you take a look at everything that has been nerfed, especially with this next card that I'm getting ready to discuss, and basically everything got, as far as the tier 1 section went, got hit just a little bit. And to just go ahead and just kind of move on into it, we've got Spreading Plague. Went from a 5 cost to a 6 cost. I understand why they moved it to a 6 cost, because you could easily just ramp really quick to 5 mana. So putting it on 6 makes it to where those aggro decks can still get out there really quickly. And depending on how you take your deck from here on, Spreading Plague being able to be that clog / board stopper right from get-go. For those aggro decks that like to go wide on board, that just, it hampers them heavily. Now, if anything, you can potentially also, depending on how this metagame kind of shapes and shakes out, you can potentially just start taking Spreading Plague out. Because, like, with Pirate Warrior basically getting a dicking, and, like, Murloc Paladin somewhat getting a bit of a kick because of the War Leader, it really depends on how things kind of go in shape. But I still see Murloc Paladin being one of the top tier decks. Pirate Warrior, I am really shaky and iffy on right now, because, like, War Axe was their big caller. And with it being hit with the Wiffle Ball bat, or Wiffle Ball Nerf bat, whatever you want to call it, it's going to be on life support. Because that 3 cost slot is very contested now. But anyway, coming back to Spreading Plague at 6 is very balanced as far as the changes go. Kicking it up to 7 would have just made it to where it was basically unplayable and you would just dust it. So, if anything, I'm just going to kick this ball in Bulb's direction and just be like, here, you get to go on your rant now.
Yeah, I was kind of scratching my head on this one as far as, because I thought that it probably conceivably could be 7, but then again, they did make a really good point about the Innervate change probably not making that necessary, and 6 probably being the right cost. We'll see. I think that it can still be played, but I think that the change in cost, along with the change in Innervate, might mean that it might make its way out of Jade decks. We'll really have to see how things shape up, but I think that Spreading Plague might be on the way out. Just because I think 6 costs might be a sticking point, especially if they get rid of Innervate. At which the point they'll probably focus more on armor. We'll probably see a return to Earthen Scales. But as of right now, I think Spreading Plague will probably become less commonplace. Even though I don't think it was the main problem card.
Oh, not at all.
And let's talk about this, because we've talked about all of the nerfs, but let's talk about one card that wasn't nerfed that probably really should have been. And let's talk about Ultimate Infestation. Now, I'm going to read why Ultimate Infestation was not nerfed. It says, our team has discussed making a change to Ultimate Infestation since it feels bad to lose to. However, our data shows us how good each individual card performs in a deck relative to other cards in that deck. Spreading Plague ended up being the best performing card in Jade and Taunt Druid, Innervate was in the top 3, and Ultimate Infestation was somewhere around the middle. But it felt much more powerful since it has a huge effect when played. We considered changing all mentions of the number 5 in Ultimate Infestation to 4, or removing one of the effects entirely. With the other changes we are making to Druid, ramping out Ultimate Infestation before turn 10 should happen less often, so we decided to leave it as is. Except here's the problem. The problem isn't that Ultimate Infestation feels bad to get hit by, which it kind of does have that effect, but the problem is that it takes away one of the downsides to Mega Ramping. See, in Ramp Druid, the Druid tries to ramp to basically get to the late game quicker, but they do so at the expense of tempo and card draw. They don't end up not having a lot of cards in their hand, and card draw ends up being a big sticking point for them. That's why in a ramp-oriented deck, you do need some sort of card draw engine. You need that especially in Jades, because it does have a little bit of ramp. However, Ultimate Infestation refills your hand, and so you do not feel bad about super ramping, because as soon as you get to 10, you can just drop Ultimate Infestation, fill your hand back up, and all the downsides are now gone. Before, Nourish was used more for card draw than ramping. Now you don't really need to draw cards with Nourish, because you can just ramp, and then just draw cards with Ultimate Infestation. It's not the 5/5 that Infestation drops, it's not the armor gain, and it's not the damage. The problem is the card draw. It's what's essentially leading decks like Jade Druid to become much more powerful, because they can essentially ramp a lot, where before Ultimate Infestation, Jade Druid really didn't focus on a super ramp engine, because it would just leave them vulnerable. Now they don't have to worry about that, because they are not going to be vulnerable. They can just Ultimate Infestation, get another huge body on the board, and refill their hand, which means that they can go off consistently a lot sooner. And that's why Ultimate Infestation is a problem. It takes away the drawback of ramp. And so, yeah, you can change it to 4/4, but really what you need to do is you either need to get rid of the card draw entirely, or change it to like drawing 3 cards, or something along the lines, where they cannot just completely regain all of the lost momentum from the card draw. If you do that, Ultimate Infestation will probably be played a lot less, and only be played in certain decks that want to use it, like, I don't know, regular Ramp Druid decks, and not Jade Druid decks. That's why Ultimate Infestation is in Jade Druid, is because it mitigates the drawbacks of ramping up super quickly. And until that is taken care of, Ultimate Infestation is going to continue to have a negative impact on the meta, and it needs to be changed.
It's gonna stick around and be a very sticky, icky card. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. Because, like, I'm already starting to kind of try to look down my own personal scope of what I'm going to do with my Jade Druid deck. And it's like, okay, I'm already looking at potentially replacing the 2 Innervates with more tech cards that could benefit me in the long run. So it's just like, I could see going with like mind control tech, or potentially grabbing up a big game hunter to put in the deck to be able to take care of the bigger crap that my opponent may throw down, just depending on what it's going to be. And then with, if anything, with like UI being a definitive staple in the deck at this point, I could also consider just chucking in the Mire Keeper for now, before like rotation happens, because at that point it just goes, all right, here's more ramp for me to use to just make sure I ramp up even more and even faster. Because yeah, I've got 2 Wild Growths, I've got 2 of the Jade Blossom, and then 2 of the Mire Keepers. Then oh hey look, potentially 2 Nourishes, to where I can start to choose. Hey, do I want card draw or do I want the actual ramp effect? I don't know which one, so, I get to choose now. Or choose more so now. And then, if need be, oh look, it's Ultimate Infestation in my hand. Bonk! Give me those 5 cards, I now have everything I need in my hand. Alright, let's start playing again, and just refill. I understand why they didn't nerf it, because, all those effects for a 10 cost, it's a 10 cost card. And plus, once rotation hits and happens, a lot of those ramp effects are going away. So, you're losing the Jade Blossom, and you're losing the Mire Keeper, and you're also losing Fandral, and you're losing the Jade. So it's just you gotta figure out, as far as your metagame goes, what you want it to kind of shape and look out to be. And really, do you want it to become Priestone? I mean, I don't know. It's just, well, can you want to throw a counterpoint in on me on this one?
Here's the thing. Ultimate Infestation is the card in Druid that is essentially allowing Druid to dominate the meta. Not just Jade's, but any Druid deck that wants to run Ultimate Infestation. It's Ultimate Infestation by itself. And again, that's because there is no downside to ramping. And you're going, well, all the ramp is going to be rotating out. Except the problem is especially in Jade Druid. And Jade Druid will be rotating out, but Ultimate Infestation means that Jade Druid is going to have a very uncomfortable stranglehold on the meta for the rest of the year. And that's a problem. As much as I love Jade Druid, that's a problem. Because if you remember, back when Gadgetzan first released, and you and I were actually testing out to try to figure out what a good Jade deck would look like, we tried out all different types of strategies, and one of the strategies we actually both of us tested out was a ramping strategy, and we discovered that it actually hampered the deck because in order to super ramp, to consistently just focus on ramping so you can get to a comfortable place really quickly and just ramp up to high level, you were losing a lot of tempo, and you're losing a lot of cards in your hand. And Ultimate Infestation takes away all of those drawbacks, and that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. And I love Jade Druid, but I think Ultimate Infestation is really bad for the metagame. If you were to hamper Ultimate Infestation, yeah, you could go, it's a 10 cost card. But if you took away the card draw and just allowed it to do 5 damage, 5 armor, summon a 5/5, it would still be a good 10 cost card. It would fit in a ramp Druid deck. But it wouldn't fit into Jade Druid anymore, because the main reason they're running it is because it mitigates any downside to just super ramping up. They would then have to take it out, and they would essentially be back to the classic version of how they would slowly ramp up, and it would open up all the weaknesses again, which is what Jade Druid really needs in order to provide a healthy meta. Right now, there's no healthy meta surrounding Jade Druid, because all of those weaknesses have kind of been shored up and allows it to be dominant, which is a bad thing. Jade Druid can still be a good deck, but it needs to have its weaknesses as well. And Ultimate Infestation is keeping that from happening. I'm actually all for Ultimate Infestation, the card draw being reduced to maybe something like 3 cards, so it's something in line with Nourish. You do 5 damage, you summon a 5/5, you get 5 armor, and you draw 3 cards. You still get some card draw, but it wouldn't be a super amount of card draw. I'm also a favor of if they made a change along the lines of deal 5 damage and then choose 2. Really, the effect needs to be tweaked, and really it's not a problem with the damage or the summon or the armor, it's a problem with the card draw. If you take care of that, basically take care of it so that it's not taking out the downside to super ramping, and so that it essentially becomes a decision card where you essentially have to decide, do I want to do this or not? And there's actually some thought process about going and actually interacting, and there's some sort of skillful thought in interacting with the card. Then absolutely, Ultimate Infestation will be good. But in order to do that, you have to get rid of the card draw, or you have to reduce the card draw. Until then, Ultimate Infestation is going to be a problem, and Jade Druid will be a super part of the problem. It's not Jade Idol. It's not the Jade mechanics. They can be fine on their own when they have weaknesses that other people can prey on. It's Ultimate Infestation that's causing a problem with Jade Druid and Druid in general. And you could go, oh, it's in the middle. But the thing is, like Quest Rogue before it, it's causing a problem in and of itself. It's causing the problem of allowing these decks to be dominant. And it's because of that card draw that eliminates the risk that ramping has. And in order for a ramp deck to be successful, you need to have that risk. That way there's a risk-reward system, which is what the best games are composed of, especially card games. And Ultimate Infestation is a problem.
We're going to see going down the scope how things will change.
I really think that we will probably see a nerf to it before the next expansion, or at least I hope we will, because I don't think anything will change as long as it's still in the meta.
And if anything, is that all we have for today/tonight, my good sir?
That's it.
Well, if anything, that has been our thoughts and discussion on the new nerfs and balance changes. If you guys have anything to discuss alongside us, please leave a comment below. And if anything, we will see you next time.